Sleep well.
Ito puts all the people who misbehave center stage.
Fight to the death. You will keep fighting.
The warriors.
Bataan Peninsula, the Philippines, April 1942. A Royal Air Force squadron is airborne to give cover fire to local civilians and cover them against the advancing Japanese forces. But as they proceed on the mission, it is evident that the British had been given false information on the positions of the enemy. The whole peninsula is already controlled by Japan. What is worse, the Japanese are completing its new P camp dubbed the Death Mart. It is considered that this camp will be the most dreadful and cruel place ever, an important move in the Japanese strategy of taking the last stronghold of Southeast Asia. As the squadron flies over the peninsula, the enemy salutes them with a deadly hail of flak. The majority of the planes either blow up in the air or crash to the ground. The squadron leader James Wright and a fellow co-pilot were able to eject and land in a nearby river and drag his injured colleague to shore. James is heartbroken to discover that the co-pilot had killed himself as a hero. Pre-dawn, there's a Japanese patrol of soldiers scouring the jungle for corpses. They are looking at a new grave that has been dug. Undisputed that someone survived. Not long after, the soldiers discover a landmine and understand that the survivor had to be nearby, which makes them go very cautiously. James notices them behind a tree that is close to them. With only a knife in hand, he has to depend upon his speed and wits. He cuts off two stray soldiers in a distraction attempt, which he achieves by throwing a rock. James strikes one to the head, then struggles with the other and finally throws him onto the mine, where it blows up and kills the man immediately. The blast warns the rest of the patrol and they start to pursue the runaway pilot. They attack him on more than one side and he is compelled to give up. Captain Hanno, who is enraged by the fact that his men died, wants to shoot James in the head where he falls, but he chooses to make him his prisoner. Upon taking the British pilot to the camp, Captain Hanno tells him that he is the sole survivor of the night air raid. Camp Commander Lieutenant Colonel Ito coldly explains that there cannot be any survivors and orders James to be executed by beheading. Captain Hanno and two soldiers take James into the woods that night in order to execute the sentence without notice by other prisoners. James swerves out of the blade in an effort to engage in a frenzied battle with his three captors just before the sword strike. Rushing along and hitting hard, he kills the two soldiers and then single-handedly fights Hero. James kills the captain with his own sword after he disarmed the captain. He has hardly time to examine the bodies when the sound attracts the interest of the troops around. James is again on the run, where he finds a dilapidated engineless glider in an open clearing. He attempts to escape to jungle and gets caught in a crude net trap, thus becoming a desperate one. James Wright is a victim and a prisoner again. Captain Endo takes the British pilot to Lieutenant Colonel Ito. News that Hanno is dead, and so are a number of soldiers. When Ito realizes that this new prisoner is not just another captive, he orders a complete search. Among the items that the man carries, he has a Royal Air Force dog tag and a special medal given to him due to outstanding service to his country. It is at this point that Ito realizes that this was not an ordinary soldier. Nevertheless, the best thought that comes to his mind is execution, revenge of the killings of Hanno. He vows to ensure that tomorrow will be the last day of the Briton and that he will be killed in his own blood. Endo proposes that the prisoner should be killed, but Ito does not accept it. He thinks that is too kind of him. He has already made something even worse of James. In the evening, the British pilot gets dumped into a hut where the other prisoners, which are Americans, Britons, and the local soldiers. In the process of defining how his mission has gone wrong, James encounters Sergeant Gabriel Beard, Jonesy, and Captain Collins. They inform him of the subterranean fights arranged by the camp guards, that the prisoners are compelled to fight with one another to entertain the guards, and as a far-fetched hope of liberty. Majority of such matches are fights to the death where one has no right of surrendering or retreating. James proposes to escape without delay. The rest do not have the same optimism. This is a dreadful place. It is, they tell us, but even worse than the Death March camp on the other side of the peninsula. It is rumored that nearly nobody makes it through the transfer there, and to those that do, life is one last trial before even hell. In the morning, James gets ready to be executed as he thinks. However, the guards do not actually clean a sword on his chest, but rather untie him. It is not an act of mercy, but just a brief respite before death, an idea of Ito. Lieutenant Colonel Colonel Ito organizes a spectacle in the presence of the whole population. A chastisement battle between three warriors who are found robbing food off their colleagues and Kuji, who is the most expert martial artist in the camp. Kuju is famous as being precise and strong and could kill a man with several blows. One of them is assaulted by the three soldiers, then the three of them at the same time, but it is to no avail. Kuji sends them with ease, with barely looking at them. He quickly and savagely kills them after getting a nod of approval Ito. Next it is the time of James to enter the ring, whether he likes it or not. The struggle will go on till one of them is killed. James defends himself by looking on instead of charging in. After Kuji finally leaps, James confronts him with one blow to the chest, inexplicably stunned by this. No one has ever seen Kuji fall. James, without second thought, puts all of his will into one last punch with his head and kills Kuji immediately. On the insistence of Captain Endo to have James executed, Lieutenant Colonel Ito chooses to leave James to live. James had fairly won his fight, but it is not the result of the fight that Ito is interested in. It is in the manner in which James got to know about such secret and forbidden martial arts tricks. It confuses even his new companions as to why he is so good at fighting. James acknowledges that he was educated by masters in Hong Kong, Thailand, Japan, and other nations, which will give him a lead over Kuji. Ito then calls James to his office later, where he praises him over the unbelievable fight. The prisoner impresses the camp commander, who is fascinated by this person and knows that he is so strong and it is fascinating to watch him. In addition, he is aware of the name of the martial arts teacher that trained James and wishes to find out whether the abilities were as impressive as they are claimed to be. The following day James has another match. He is this time matched against three well-trained soldiers of strong body whose job is to kill him, and the technique, agility, and speed are so astonishing. The British pilot disables all the three people with ease. He would have choked one of them, and I was evidently waiting that. But James isn't a murderer. He doesn't kill for pleasure. His victory has seen him sparing the lives of his opponent. But Ito is furious. Directly after the game, the unsuccessful men are executed by the lieutenant colonel as a lesson to the rest of them. Thus they will fight to the last bit. The situation becomes tauter in the camp, and James understands that it is time to act before the moment. Other inmates advise waiting because they heard that they will be relocated to a different camp after a week. However, James has known that the alleged death march will be much worse, and as such he decides to move on. The remaining option of leaving the peninsula is to get in touch with Allied troops and hope that there are British or American vessels around to pick them. James suggests stealing a radio to send out a distress call. The following morning the prisoners are instructed to construct walls using sandbags. Some of them begin a fight as a diversion against the Japanese soldiers using the chaos. As they attempted to establish order, James goes up the watchtower and takes a radio. Any step he takes would lead to death. On the contrary, he makes his escape when he is caught by a nurse. He is scared she will bring his scheme to light, but the silence and meek Teresa, who is regularly mocked by the soldiers and even more so by Ito himself, remains silent. Similar to James, she is a prisoner that dreams about being free, and she pleads with him to take her with him. Later that evening, the pilot chooses to make a call via the radio, but he has no choice. When he attempts to send some message, the Japanese soldiers will not merely hear him, they will get him where he is. At the moment, the only thing the prisoners can do is overhear the signals and communications with hope of intercepting the frequency of friendly forces. Beard becomes the operator, listening 24/7 and recording all the words to enable them break the code and create the appropriate message to make an evacuation call. The following day, Ito brings all the prisoners together in a massacre. He has heard that two men had attempted to get away at night and went so far as to get past the guarded perimeter. He requires them to identify their accomplices, but no one speaks out. Ito isolates one of the prisoners and assures that he would grant clemency in case he would give the name of the partner that had attempted to run away with him. The man is hoping to be free and as such points at the second prisoner. A fatal mistake. Ito orders them both shot. Later in the evening, James finds out that the two had been able to find a way out and return. Not sure what to do next, Jonesy is the only individual who knows the path to be followed because the Japanese soldier had tipped off one of them. James pleads with him to give him the information on how and where to get out without being noticed. Details that he requires to implement his escape plan. The pilot is waiting until night falls, when he gets everything he requires and crept out of the shed pushing two rotten boards up, and removed very slowly, lest he should be discovered by the searchlight on the watchtower. He pushes some loose sandbags and crawls beneath the barbed wire. Meanwhile, one of the Japanese guards inspects the room of the prisoner and spots Sachs with James in his bed, but fails to take any action since he is the confidential partner of the prisoner. After being released, the British man scales a hill and sees an Allied ship anchored at sea. Having understood understood that it is indeed possible to escape, he tunes on a radio and calculates that it is the Americans, and that he can get in touch with them only if he has the right word. James gets back to the camp in the same fashion after inspecting the glider once again and making the decision of how to utilize it. He tells Collins and Gabriel about his plan in the morning, and they suspect that he has lost his mind. James believes that they will be able to attract the attention of the plane. The planes of the Allies will pass so low over the hill that he can attach the glider with a tow rope and be dragged away. It is crazy, yet they have nothing in their minds and need to rely on the pilot, who is sure that it is possible. Soon, Ito calls James in. The lieutenant colonel listens to American conversations all the time, yet he is unable to understand what he hears. Secret words, passwords, and codes make his fear paranoid. Ito believes in the near future, the peninsula will be attacked by Allied forces, and his men will not be able to resist it. Death appears unavoidable, and he thinks that the prisoners will die first. James doesn't share that view. He is willing to engage a H-100 Red Force and kill anybody who gets in his way to freedom. He is being obstinate to Ito, and he does not want to share any details of any attacks, just keeping the lieutenant colonel in suspense and anticipating any attack to follow. Ito cannot control his anger and breaks the table in one hit, and he then resolves to make James pay after he failed to talk with him. They use 2 posts to have him bound, and then they kick him brutally in the open. A soldier, who appears to be friendly, offers to insert a wooden stick into his mouth to help with the blows. James was brutally beaten by 3 soldiers, and this is just the start of his trial. Once he falls due to exhaustion, they unbind him to begin a 3-on-1 fight and barely keep him on his feet. The British man still overpowers the soldiers and hits them with a lynch, yet he will not inflict the fatal blow and gets a shot to the head with a rifle butt. Ito is not able to kill the best fighter. He flattered over his talent, and in a frenzy of anger and frustration, he goes on to shoot 6 random inmates to release his spleen. James comes to himself in the medical block a few days later. He is too weak due to the previous battle, but Teresa takes care of him unwearyingly till he comes back to his strength. Having understood that she is a prisoner herself, the British man assures of his assistance in escaping the peninsula and getting her freedom back. On this particular night, James wakes up to the noise of gunfire and a sword in his throat. Ito desires to execute him, yet he is intrigued with the efforts of the prisoner to assert his freedom. The lieutenant conducts the mass public executions, killing anybody who questions power of the Japanese army. But James will have a special part to play, and in case he is not the winner, he will die. Also, James later reunites with the other inmates and understands that time is very limited. Ito is terror-stricken by what is coming and starts killing randomly. Gabriel and James do not wish to increase the body count and in the process attempt a bold feat of contacting an American warship. They stealth their way through the camp at night and in the process face a soldier. James hits him once, and this is a danger, but the sound is dangerous. Luckily, a Japanese soldier arrives to see them, who happens to be a friend, and rather than betraying them, he assists them to get out of the camp in the least amount of time possible. Simultaneously, Collins also tries to run away, but shoots a soldier too loudly. A warning is sent, and the guard forcefully searches the barracks of the prisoners in search of the escapees. Fortunately, Collins, Gabriel, and James were able to go back to their locations, and it was not clear who murdered the 2 soldiers. The following morning, Ito somehow understands that Collins was one of the prisoners who attempted to escape. He prepares the trial that James had gone through a week before, a battle with 3 of his best soldiers on the right to live. In an attempt to save himself, James asserts that he was the real escape, as opposed to Collins. Ito is willing to trust him and may even release Collins on one condition. The pilot should be able to show an outlawed strike and kill a prisoner kneeling. James does not agree to murder a guilty man, neither will he demonstrate the fatal gesture, which angers the camp commander. Eventually, Ito commands the execution of the prisoner, and he goes on to initiate Collins' fight with the 3 soldiers. Collins does not want to give up, even though he is in a risky situation and has a serious wound in his leg, which makes him an easy target. He abruptly hits one of the soldiers as they approach him, throwing him into a fight of bone crushing. Collins is ferocious and violent as a feral animal, biting the throat of one of the Japanese soldiers. Eventually, he kills all the 3 rapists, and he is now entitled to live, and that only aggravates Ito even more. This night, James makes an audacious move and goes ahead to fight Ito. He even dares the lieutenant to fight, yet the leader in charge of the camp rejects it and thinks he cannot fight one-on-one since his rank does not permit it. Not long after this, Beard and informs that he has found the key word with which the cipher has been written. On the same evening, Gabriel and James get out of the camp one more time and walk to the top of the hill. They transmit a coded message to the American troops using the key phrases that they have come up with. It will not matter even in case the Japanese establish their location. They may think that rebels are hiding in the jungle. The encoded words do not have any sense to the Japanese, but Americans can interpret it that prisoners and their supporters are in need of rescue. Gabriel and James later get back to the prisoner barracks an hour later and they see the place is empty. They have fallen in a trap. The soldiers are all around them, and death appears to be the only thing that can happen. Tied up the following morning, Gabriel and James wake up to the scream of the planes flying overhead and the plummeting of the bombs. The signal has been deciphered by the Americans and they have stormed the camp. Soldiers struggle to defend themselves desperately as the flying planes surround them and Ito secludes himself in the command center. His paranoia has now turned into a bitter reality and he does not know how to behave. Soon Teresa and her friend Anna sneak in to liberate the prisoners and lead them to escape. To get access to the tower to reach the radio, the nurses fake the murder of a Japanese soldier when they pose as victims and some of the survivors hastily exit the camp. James shoots the soldiers to stop the shooting of Beard, Jonesy, and the rest. They enter the struggle and help out the escape. Collins fights against Captain Endo and even manages to get the upper hand and beat him with his hands, but he is shot by other Japanese soldiers. James does not want to go until he completes what he is there to do and goes to the headquarters of Ito. They engage in a sword fight, which incidentally appears like the British man is about to kill the camp leader when a second wave of bombing erupts. With the chaos, Gabriel commands everybody to drop all things and run before it is late. Captain Endo even attacks Gabriel and James in the back trying to kill them, yet Ito blocks his shot. He does it out of respect to his opponent and the prisoners are free to go. The group then soon obtains a glider and prepares it to fly. Just in time, the Japanese soldiers start closing in on them, but American pilots open a path with machine gun fire. It is a tragedy that one of those who dies is the friendly Japanese soldier who had been assisting them all along. A minute later, there is a second plane striking the tow cable of the glider, which brings up the plane and the survivors escape, abandoning the peninsula. Japan 1950, James arrives at a martial arts school in search of Ito and completes what he had started, killing his biggest enemy. After encountering the hero, Ben, the son of Ito, he finds out that Ito was killed last year. James insists on the medallion that was lost in 1942 and Ben, in his role as a hero, declines the peaceful resolution of the issue. He sends 8 students to beat up James and kill him, but they are too feeble and they fail. The hero of Ben chooses to duel with James one-on-one and loses miserably. The British man might have given a lethal, prohibited blow, yet he halts his fist in front of the face of the boy and saved his life. Appreciatively, the hero of Ben rewards him with a medallion, and at last realizes why his father admired this man and accorded him mercy. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a comment about your favorite movie and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.